Dear viewers, warm welcome to the third round of 8th National Television English Parliamentary Debate Competition. Ladies and gentlemen, the format of the parliamentary debate competition differs from the traditional style. In this system, there is a government party and an opposition party. The motion is placed in the House by the Prime Minister, who is also the leader of the House. The role of the opposition is always to place constructive arguments against the bill. Today's motion before the House is, democracy is a myth. Pabna Cadet College is representing the government side and Sunbeams International School Dhaka is representing the opposition bench. The government side is being represented by Cadet Kaushik of Pabna Cadet College, who is also the Prime Minister and leader of the House. Cadet Shagur is the member of the cabinet and is in charge of Ministry of Commerce. And Cadet Shahtab is a member of the Treasury bench. The opposition bench is being represented by Sunbeams International School Dhaka, Muidul Haq of Sunbeams International School, who is the leader of the opposition, Ayan Chaudhuri is the deputy leader of the opposition, and Zia Mohammed is a member of the opposition party. The honorable adjudicators of this session are Ahmed Reza, Associate Professor, Department of English, Jahangirnagar University and ex-debater, Subhash Singh Roy, pharmacist and columnist, ex-debater, Prashanta Bhushan Borua, adjudicator, Cambridge Interversity Debating Championship and Head of Laws, London East Bank College, Masood Chaudhuri, Senior Lecturer, Department of Media and Communication, Independent University of Bangladesh, ex-debater and life member, Leeds University Debating Society, England. Tony Michael Gomez, Communication Specialist, UNAIDS. The Honorable Speaker of this House is Professor Dr. Ainun Nishat, renowned environmentalist and water management specialist. Before the House starts its proceedings, let me inform you about the order and time allocation of each debater. Prime Minister, 4 minutes. Leader of the Opposition, 5 minutes. Member of the Cabinet, 5 minutes. Deputy Leader of the Opposition, 5 minutes. Treasury Bench Member, 5 minutes. Opposition Member, 5 minutes. The Opposition Leader will get another 3 minutes for rebuttal, and the Prime Minister will get last 4 minutes to wind up his party stand. All the members of the competing teams, the adjudicators, the invited guests, and the other members of the audience will comprise the member of the House. I now most humbly request the Honorable Speaker to start today's proceedings. Honorable Speaker.
I call the House to order. The Assembly today would witness a debate as the government side would propose a motion which reads, democracy is a myth. Now it's my privilege to invite the Honorable Prime Minister and the Leader of the House to move the motion.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving the floor. Today's bill proposed is democracy is a myth. We have two terms here, democracy and myth. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos and kratia. It means rule by the people. That is, the government of the people by the whole people. And myth is somewhat that many people believe, but that doesn't exist at present. So it can be defined as an imaginary castle built on weak basement of reality. But what's the relationship between these two? Okay, let me explain. Former US President Thomas Jefferson told, democracy is nothing more than mob rule where 51% of people take away rights of other 49%. Do you need a practical example? Okay. In last US presidential election, 59% of voters supported Barack Obama. So he became president of a country whose 41% of people refused him as president. Isn't it? So how it can be government of all people? Actually, the conditions of democracy are not fulfilled. So it has no existence anywhere, and that's why we are telling it a myth. Light opposition. I am telling Bangladesh is not a democratic country. Are you shocked? The Prime Minister himself declaring the state as undemocratic? But is the fact, and truth is sometimes quite harsh. Just focus on our history. 4th Amendment of Constitution didn't permit constructive opposition. It also didn't permit any existence of opposition party. And 2 terms military government and last military-backed caretaker government has proved that democracy has no root in our country. Moreover, there is no practice of democracy inside the political parties. Rather, revised monarchy is present there. It's not only true for us. Just look around us. Rahul, Rajiv and Indira Gandhi of India, Srimava Bandar Naik and Chandra Kumaratunga of Sri Lanka, Bilawal and Benazir Bhutto of Pakistan are all good examples of these. So her political parties are not democratic. How can they establish democracy in states? Land opposition. 2,500 years ago, this theory was born in ancient Greece. The city-states tried to apply it in society, but in practice the rights of women and slaves were ignored totally. Weren't the human beings like us? Then it's clear that democracy started its journey in wrong route, deviating from its aims. That's why it's no longer democracy. We might want to build Venus de Milo, but alas, we have built a statue of monkey. Are you happy with our monkey land opposition? First one is economic equality. There is two classes in the world, that is the rich and the poor. The rich influence the government decision and democracy has no meaning to the poor. So excluding this part, how can you dream about establishing democracy? Land opposition. Winston Churchill told, democracy speaks for numerical majority. So one time it automatically turns into tyranny by the majority. That is dictatorship for limited term. The best example is Führer Adolf Hitler of Germany. That's why Stuart Mill told, if you want to kill a dog, give it a bad name. But if you want to exploit the people, do it in the name of democracy. Yet I know you will show various delusive arguments in favor of democracy. I promise I will agree with your opinion if you just admit the triangle is a perfect square or banana and jackfruit are all same. As these are not possible, likewise democracy is also impossible. It will remain a myth as it was before. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Now it's my privilege to give the floor to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and my esteemed judges for giving me the floor. The motion for the House today is that democracy is a myth, and we, the opposition, strictly disagree with it. I would like to start my speech with a clear description of what democracy is, and then explain how it is implemented throughout the world. Democracy includes civil liberties under free electoral systems, political rights, press freedom, voice and accountability, independent judiciary, political stability, law and order and government effectiveness. It expresses the idea that people come first. The government must conform to the needs of people, not vice versa. Accountability is about power, about people not just having a say in official decisions, but the right to hold the rulers to account. Democracy does not promote absolute freedom, but liberty. One cannot do whatever he pleases, but one can do whatever he pleases as long as they fall under the laws and regulations. Democracy is also more desirable because the political space and institutions that provide for open contests give opponents hope that change is possible without destroying the system. Press freedom in our country alone has gone through leaps and bounds just in the last decade, and an absolute press freedom exists in our country because democracy exists. The sole fact that we have a government sitting right here in front of us is living proof that democracy is a reality. Now let's start with the modern history of democracy. In the 1980s, growing pressures against excessive military dictatorships in Latin America caused them to topple one after another, starting with Ecuador and Peru. Rising opposition throughout the 80s in Africa tossed out many long-standing dictators, including Malawi's Kamuzu Banda in 94. People's Power removed Ferdinand Marcos from the Philippines in 1986. Perhaps most striking was the advent of full democracy in South Africa in 94. Even monarchies such as Jordan and Morocco have now increased space for people's participation in the political life of the community, and Tunisia has taken steps to expand political participation. The number of democratic regimes doubled from 41 to 82 from 1980 to 2000. Currently, there are 123 democratic countries and the trend is increasing. These are facts on the true beginning of the implementation of democracy throughout the world, my respected government, which coincidentally also proves democracy to be a reality. Amartya Sen has said that a country does not have to be fit for democracy. Rather, it has to become fit through democracy. This is a truly momentous change. Now, since the establishment of the United Nations, it has committed itself to striving for a world of peace and justice, grounded in universal respect for human rights, a mission reaffirmed 8 years ago by the Millennium Declaration. If they are trying to strengthen the existing democracy of various countries, how can my respected government call it a myth? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948, enunciated the essentials of democracy. Ever since its adoption, it has constituted inspiration-making in every corner of the world and has contributed greatly to the eventual global acceptance of democracy as a universal value. The right to choose how they rule and who rules them is, after all, what democracy is all about.
You have a point?
Yes.
Please.
Absolute press freedom is not prevailing in our country. How he can say this?
Well, he has a point. He is challenging your statement that absolute freedom of press is not prevailing in Bangladesh.
Well, sir, press freedom is prevailing in our country at this age. Previously, if we would write against the king, we'd be beheaded. Right now, we can write and express our opinions in the press freedom however much we like, and everybody has their scope to express their feelings.
So he says that it exists. I mean, the press can write anything.
But the media of people who are going on the Chittagong cricket match, in Chittagong the cricket match was going on, the killing of press, the journalists are beaten severely. Where is the absolute press freedom?
You have a response to that? A journalist was beaten by police when he was covering a cricket match?
Yes, sir. Obviously, democracy isn't a perfect form of government. Obviously, it has its drawbacks, but small examples does not demolish the existence of democracy.
Yes.
Okay, would you take that as an answer?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please proceed.
More than 100 countries have now signed the Warsaw Declaration of the Community of Democracies, which is an intergovernmental organization of democracies and democratizing countries with a stated commitment to strengthening and deepening democratic norms and practices worldwide. All of which reinforces the principle that democracy does not only belong to any particular country, but is a universal right. For example, the United Nations has given concrete support for elections held in numerous countries, often at decisive moments in their history, more than 20 in the last years alone, including Afghanistan, Palestine, and Iraq, which provide you solid proof how democracy is practiced all over the world. With just two exceptions, all of the world's richest countries are the most democratic regimes. In addition, 42 of the 48 high human development countries are democracies. When a government fails to live up to the needs and desires of the people can throw them out of the office. No other form of accountability is so direct. This was practically seen in the election held in our own country just a few months back, proving again the existence of democracy. Now, there are of course many forms of democracy like socialist, liberal, representative and parliamentary democracy. Liberal or constitutional democracy is the dominant form of democracy in the 21st century. Liberal democracies today usually have universal suffrage, granting all adult citizens the right to vote regardless of race, gender or property ownership. There is general agreement in states of the European Union, Japan, India, Mexico, South Africa, New Zealand are all liberal democracies. As a British Prime Minister, Sir Winston Churchill had also said, there is no such thing as a perfect form of government on earth, but any other form of government produces even less desirable results than democracy. Until today, no other form of government has been invented that can regulate public affairs better than democracy. If such great politicians believe in democracy, why shouldn't we? May I have 15 more seconds?
Okay, please.
My minister will further emphasize on the various forms of democracy and their implementations throughout the world. My cabinet minister will emphasize on how elections are a major part of democracy and they have been indicators of democracy's existence around the world. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and respected judges for giving me this opportunity to speak, to provide facts on how democracy today is a reality, not a myth. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a problem here because the way the government side has defined democracy, that when all the people takes a decision, that should be democracy. And they said that in election, if a party wins 51% vote and then they run the country. On the other side, the opposition said that democracy is the form by which people can decide who is going to rule. And they said that through democracy, you can change a government who is going to rule. So it is never possible that everybody takes part in a decision-taking process, but you can sort of decide who is going to represent everybody. So I see that definition of democracy has been used in two different ways by both the sides. With that, we have to proceed now. May I now invite the Honorable Cabinet Minister in charge of Commerce to make his statement.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. My opposition leader has said that South Africa is a democratic country, but why separated colleague of ruling ANC party of South Africa had been charged at their first work day when they are preparing for constructive opposition. What was their fault? Mr. Speaker, according to them, their fault was they had spoken against the ruling Democratic Party, who was then on a funny ruling democratic way. How nice you imagine democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, my Honorable Prime Minister asked you to give an example of a democratic country, but you didn't. How you could be? Because a single country is not a democratic. Ladies and gentlemen, among 193 independent countries, there is no democratic country. Rather, this country is a republic. We all know from political science that republic is the organ of democracy. And democracy is the rule by every people, whereas in republic it is the rule by the majority. Then how it could be the same? Diamond evolves from coal. Now if you want to say that diamond and coal are the same thing, then what can I do, man? Yes, I can do only one thing for you. That I do believe that so many renowned psychiatrists live in Dhaka. So please meet at least one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, our Honorable opposition leader said that Bangladesh is a democratic country. How nice, you imagine a democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is said in the 27th article of our constitution that all citizens are equal in the eye of law and have the equal right to get the shelter of law. Does it true for our country? 50% of our total population are women, but only 20% goes to work. Economic equality, political equality are not established till now. And still many significant political cases are.
Yes, please.
You're bringing out deficiencies with democracy. We more than agree with you that we have deficiencies, but democracy does exist.
No,
It is
you
there.
cannot make a statement. You have a question to him, or
Yes,
you have
you're bringing up
secret.
deficiency. Bring me something where it does not exist at all. That something does not exist. The part of democracy where it does not exist at all. You're giving me deficiencies.
Deficiencies, but democracy have to fulfill its condition. Number one, active part in political affairs. Number two, responsibility of the governor to the governed. Number three, social equality. But where you have found this? I want to say that democracy have to fulfill its condition.
Yes,
Okay.
it does not fulfill condition perfectly.
Yes.
You're talking about utopia.
Yes.
Utopia, it does not exist.
Yes.
But we have a system that works.
But-
Maybe it does not work perfectly, but it is working. Haven't we seen a democratic country?
Okay,
No.
so let's stop here. He's saying it is working, and you are saying it is not working.
Yes, sir.
So you will have your chance to explain your point. Please proceed.
Thank you.
For long 2500 years, democracy are trying to fulfill its condition. But Mr. Speaker, how it can fulfill? It can't be. So that we have lost 2500 years back. But we don't want to lose another 2500 years. Speaking with my opposition leader that their fake speech is going on, and the topic was democracy, which is only bottomless basket. I only want to say that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's come to the condition that the number one condition is active part in political affairs. Number two, responsibility of the governor to the governed. Number three, social equality. Firstly, active part in political affairs. Though we can see that our political parties both announced before the election that they would join in Jatiyo Sangsad session, but after the election we can surely say that they didn't do this. Secondly, responsibility of the governor to the governed.
Wait a minute. You have a point?
Yes.
Please.
You mentioned that diamond comes from coal, and you compare diamond to Republican, and you compare diamond to democracy and coal to Republican form of democracy.
Yes.
We are not trying to say they're the same things. Wouldn't you say diamond exists and coal also exists?
Yes. Yes. I want to say that
exists.
according to you, democracy, republic is the organ of democracy. So democracy and republic can be same. But if you say that according to Dalton, man evolves from monkey, then if you want to say that if one morning you seems your face as the face of monkey, then what can I do? It is not the same.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The more pernicious effect is that people actually begin to attribute and incorporate tenets of democracies into an administrative structure. Things like referendums and ballot initiatives. These are not only responsible but also entirely illogical. Why should we be making decisions we elect people to make? What legitimacy is gained after getting a majority of voters to pass anything? If 71% voters vote to ban cloning, does that make it right? If 51% voters vote to ban smoking, does that make it right? If 99.99% people vote to redistribute property, does that make it right? The answer of all these questions is simply no. Absolutely not. Truth is not determined by how many adherents one can get to go along with you. For this reason only, you
Okay,
cannot find democracy.
wait a minute. He's in the last minute. So you will get an opportunity to speak immediately after he is finished, so you can answer at that time. Please.
For this reason only, you cannot find democracy anywhere but shouting for only the words having 10 letters, democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, if democracy really exists, why then people are crying throughout the world for food, cloth and shelter? Why in America 5 women are being raped per minute? Why separated Koplik of ruling ANC party of South Africa had been charged at the first work day when they were preparing for constructive opposition? You cannot give my answer because there is no democracy. Democracy is only the myth. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thanks to all for your patience hearing.
Thank you. It's my privilege to invite now the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. Good morning to everyone. I'll be talking about the different forms of democracy and show you evidence where they're being practiced and prove to you that democracy does exist, not just in theory, but in reality. Bangladesh, along with the UK, Canada and Australia have a parliamentary democracy. Parliamentary democracy is a government where representatives are opposed to president's rule by decree. Under parliamentary democracy, government is exercised by a delegation to an executive ministry and subject to ongoing review, checks and balances by the legislature elected by the people. Let me emphasize the importance of statement. Democracy is a work in progress, a state of condition constantly perfectible. Therefore, different countries always adapt different forms of democracy to suit the social, cultural and religious needs. Our own country, Bangladesh, has shown the world that democracy does exist. With its success in the recent parliamentary elections, they yielded a 74% voter turnout, the highest in our country's history, and members of the parliament who seek to represent the masses being voted into power. Some may say that democracy is not achieved because social elites may exploit the will of the minorities. Therefore, different countries such as the USA, countries in Europe and countries in South America have taken on liberal democracies to tackle these problems and have been able to do so.
You have a point?
UK is a government of constitutional monarchy. It's not democracy, but you have addressed it as a democratic country. That's my point of view.
Yes, we have a parliamentary democracy in UK. Is that not a democracy? Do we not have
it's
a parliament?
constitutional monarchy, and it is told by the UK people. This constitutional monarchy, not parliamentary democracy.
Ooh, don't we have a parliament there? Is that not a parliament
But
democracy?
it's constitutional monarchy.
Constitutional
Only
monarchy.
parliament doesn't reflect that it's democracy.
How do you say it's not democracy when the parliament decide what happens in the country?
Parliament is only constitution, not all conditions.
Wait. You have to address through me. So he's questioning whether in UK there is a parliamentary democracy, because his point, the Prime Minister's point, is that there is a queen or a king, and therefore it is a constitutional monarchy system that is prevalent over there.
Yes.
And your point is that there is a parliament, elections are held.
Yes, sir.
Who takes decisions?
The parliament and the monarchy.
So that should be your response.
Yes, sir. Parliament and the monarchy. The democracy does exist there, along with the monarchy, side by side. You cannot say that it's a myth because it doesn't exist. It does exist. We have a parliament democracy in the UK. We're not saying that it's all the same. We are clearly distinguishing it, but it does exist over there.
Okay, let's proceed further. I mean, we have time is an issue. Please
Yes,
proceed.
A myth can be defined as something having only an imaginary or unverifiable existence. When 67 countries around the world have taken steps towards democracy and have been able to achieve some or all elements of formal democracy, how can you call it a myth? If we take our own country as evidence, all the factors that my leader of opposition has mentioned, like the independent judiciary, well-functioning political parties, and press freedom, do exist. The independent judiciary recently proved that not even the heads of states are above the law. Our electoral system has become a role model for other developing countries, and press freedom leaves no news unnoticed. We agree that these factors are plagued with corruption and bias, and that is exactly why we should work towards its betterment and not pass the bill to democracy as a myth. Honorable Prime Minister, if you purchase a bottle of milk from a store, but the storekeeper gives you less than a liter of milk, do you say that the storekeeper has not given you milk at all, or that he has given you less than a liter of milk? Similarly, when various forms of democracy exist around the world, should we not strive towards filling up that bottle of democracy instead of calling the bottle itself a myth? Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, members of the House.
Thank you. Now it's my privilege to invite the Honorable Member of the Treasury Bench to make a statement.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. Last 5 minutes, our Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition sang in praise of democracy. I think you failed to understand what we are saying. We also admit democracy exists, but do you know what exists? In the books written by the political thinkers, not in reality. You know, an election promise is the only contract in the world which is not binding. I think I should explain it. A tenant has to pay a deposit to a landlord before moving in. An employee has to work for a few days before getting paid. But a voter has to cast his vote before he can expect to be represented. And if the elected don't fulfill their election promise, the electorate has nothing to do before next election. Lion and Opposition Party. Repeatedly you are telling for the establishment of your so-called democracy. If democracy isn't a myth, then why the guardian of all independent country, UNO, is itself undemocratic? It is crystal clear that UNO is currently a puppet in the hand of the most powerful nations of the world. Why only 5 countries have permanent seats in Security Council? Why a single veto can change the unionization of rest of the countries? Why has Israel been allowed to continue its reign of terror with US smiling, approving over them? why the cries of international community been stifled and ignored for more than half a century, and where the democracy is in Greek mythology. Our honorable leader of the opposition claimed democracy is prevailing since majority is granted everywhere. A true democracy should minimally require majority to elect representatives or government. It is unlikely but conceivable now that we could elect a president with only 40% of vote. What kind of union it is? Who will own it? Though 60% of the voters refused him, he will be elected. Really, majority is granted everywhere. The theory of democracy originated with the view to establishing people's rule. But has that been ever possible? Our honorable leader of the opposition claimed people elect the representatives through election and people's rule established. But what happens after the elections? Those representatives do whatever they like without bothering what people may think. Do you need example? Okay. For your kind information, 3 months ago in West Bengal of India, the government decided to industrialize the arable lands. But when the mass people opposed it, the government shoot them. Is this democracy? The US government attacked Iraq without the verdict of the mass people. What kind of democracy it is? Is this people's rule? Don't you understand? Your imaginary theory harmed the mass people more than it benefited. Supporting the speech of Honorable Prime Minister, I'm again saying democracy is nothing more than a mob rule in which 51% of the people can take away the right of other 49. In democracy, the opinions of the minority are ignored by the majority. If we turn over the pages of history, we can see the operation of the majority on minority.
Wait a minute. You have a point?
He has brought up a statement that is used at least 2 centuries back. I think we need to update ourselves and not use that in the 21st century.
So what's the statement?
The statement that mob rule. It has been used 2 centuries back. It does not fulfill the context of the current time.
Democracy was established 250 years ago.
Yes,
What are you telling for democracy now?
It has come through leaps and bounds. What the problems that were there has been achieved.
Is also coming through leaps and bounds.
Wait. Just, he has questioned whether the democracy is ruled by, tyranny or mob, the term you have said. Would you like to define why you are saying it?
I said democracy is nothing more than a mob rule in which 51% of the people can take away the right of other 49. It was given by the US President Thomas Jefferson.
Okay, so he has defined why he's saying is ruled by the mob.
Yes.
With an authorization, because 51% can then dictate what is happening.
Yes, but he is bringing a concept that is 2 centuries back. And may I ask you, is 51% better than 1% monarchy ruling the 99%?
Okay. In last US election, 59% of the voters take away the right of other 41. So?
I'm saying, is that better?
Wait.
My question.
Now here's a question that if there was a monarchy in the country, which means that 1% is deciding everything, versus 51% deciding for everybody. So that is his question.
Yes, sir.
Would you prefer that?
It is not the rule by the people. It's ruled by the majority, and it is republic, not democracy.
Okay, he's making the point that it is a majority but ignoring the views of the other 49% or minority.
Yes,
so
sir.
that is his point.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Okay, let's proceed.
Thank you, sir.
So, it's prevailing in the present world also. In our country, the minorities cannot express their opinions freely. In America, the Negroes don't have favorable condition to give vote. Our deputy opposition claimed it is never possible to consider the opinion of all. So, it is never possible to establish your so-called democracy, and it always remains as a myth. Democracy is a myth that has been kept alive by teachers, politicians, and innumerable dreamy people. Democracy, by definition, cannot go hand in hand with inalienable right, because democracy cannot recognize inalienable right. An inalienable right, by definition.
You have a point?
He mentioned that Negroes don't have a right to vote, or
I've never mentioned.
okay. Your statement was that Negroes are being
Don't have favorable conditions.
don't have favorable conditions, right? Okay, but the U.S. president is black,
Okay.
so
Our Prime Minister is also a woman. But in our country, is women's right established till now?
Okay.
that is a deficiency. But would
That is also a deficiency.
yes, I'm agreeing. That is a deficiency.
This is why it's a myth.
Okay. Deficiency and myth are not the same thing.
Okay, so you will get an opportunity to take up this point. So would you
So,
finish your
at
statement?
last,
Is time is
democracy-
over? Time is over, so you have 30 seconds additional.
At last, democracy can be defined as a form of government which has never actually existed anywhere in the world, doesn't today, and undoubtedly never will. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you all.
Thank you. Now may I give the floor to the honorable member of the opposition, and you may take up the point which you just made a few minutes back.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. Good morning to everyone present. Our motion today is democracy is a myth, and as you very well know by now, we the opposition are strictly against it. In my speech, I'll be talking about the success of recent elections, which is an integral part of any democracy in our own country, Bangladesh. I'll also be giving a comprehensive summary of the main points made by my previous speakers in their speeches, thus clearly showing you how democracy is not only a myth, but is also being practiced around the world and improved. Therefore, it is not a myth. Democracy, as we all know, is a form of government in which power is held directly or indirectly by citizens under a free electoral system. That is a system of elections. Now, what is an election? An election is a decision-making process by which a population chooses an individual to hold formal office. This is a usual mechanism by which modern representative democracy fills offices in the legislature, in the regional and local government. Now, I would like to further talk about the elections that are held in Bangladesh. Bangladesh elects on a national level a legislature for one house or chamber. The unicameral Jatiyo সংসদ, meaning national parliament, has 330 members, of which 300 members are directly elected through a national election for a 5-year term in single-seat constituencies, while the 30 members are reserved for those who are selected by the national party or coalition. The process that I described has been carried out in our own country since 1970, when the first election was held. Then how can you say that democracy is a myth? I would like to further talk about the recent election that was held in Bangladesh on 29 December 2008. According to statistics, 55,728,000 votes were cast. There was 74.9% voter turnout, the highest yet in our country. People from all around Bangladesh, including many who are watching this right now, got together and used their equal power and right to freely vote for a government they thought was best suited to run their country for the next 5 years. Isn't that what democracy is all about?
You have a point?
So, 100% votes were not granted, and still we have to call our military force to arrange a fair election. Is this democracy?
Again, what you're saying is deficiencies. Yes, I agree that we have to do this, but in the future, see, elections had failed around 2 years ago, but then now the success of elections have been taken up in this year. So wouldn't you say this is a step forward? So in the future, we'll probably not have a military.
So you're saying that this is a myth that all people are casting vote? I mean, if all people would have appeared and casted their vote, and that would have been representative of everybody of the country. So he's saying that 74% participated, which is an improvement from previous position. So it's a deficiency, and he's not agreeing to the term that this is a myth. Would you accept this explanation?
No.
Okay.
Because 10% votes were never granted, and still we require a caretaker government to to arrange a fair election and a military force to arrange a fair election. But so democracy is, and you accepted that there are some deficiencies.
Yes.
And these loopholes are so big that for this reason democracy is a myth.
Okay, so your point is taken. Please proceed.
So as I was saying, there's a 74.9% voter turnout, the highest yet in our country. People from all around Bangladesh got together and used their equal power and right to freely vote for a government they thought was best suited to run their country for the next 5 years. And majority ruled. Isn't that what democracy is about? I assure you, democracy is not a myth. Look around you. Today we are at the peak of press freedom, accountability, transparency. Decisions regarding the welfare of our country are no longer taken behind closed doors. The citizens have a right to know, and they are being informed through television and press what the government they themselves have elected are taking, what actions they are taking. The politicians are also accountable for the actions that they are taking, which we saw these past 2 years. Many ministers, whose names I will not take, were taken into custody on charges of corruption, tax evasion, and stealing of relief funds. And they have had to answer to the law regarding their various illegal activities. Therefore, you can clearly see that accountability exists in our very own democracy. Now, you might say that democracy has various deficiencies, but deficiency and existence are two completely different things. Say there's a policeman who is inept at his duties. What would you do? Would you train him further to help him get better? Or would you just say that he does not exist and leave it at that? Which brings me to my next point, that today, instead of debating whether democracy is a myth or not, we should try and improve it and strengthen it further. like my deputy has already mentioned, democracy is a work in progress. As we speak, countries such as India, Mexico are striving to achieve perfect democracy. If they believed that democracy itself did not exist, wouldn't you say, if they believed that democracy itself did not exist, why would they try and do so? Now, the motion presented today goes against the belief of millions of people all around the world. They believe that democracy has helped them cross certain social boundaries which they thought were not possible. I would like to end my speech by saying something about the end result of this debate. The winner of this debate is determined not by an individual, but by our 5 esteemed judges here who will be voting, and majority will win. Wouldn't you say that this is democracy all over again? Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for giving me the floor. I'd like to say.
Thank you. Now we enter into rebuttal round, and it's my privilege to invite the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for giving me the floor again. The existence of democracy throughout the world is undeniable. Whatever my respected government have pointed out in this whole debate are deficiencies of democracy, when they themselves have defined myth as non-existence. Deficiencies and non-existency are completely two different aspects. If they are emphasizing on the flaws of democracy, in the way I see it, we're all debating on the fact that democracy does exist and only needs certain modifications. As Thomas Jefferson had also said, that the only way a government can function and the only way people's voices can be expressed is through a process in which the decisions are made by the majority. Now, this isn't a perfect way of controlling the government, but decisions made by a minority or by one person is even worse. Now, my honorable my respected government have talked about quotations or the start of democracy thousands and hundreds of years ago, which I feel is quite pointless to our debate. The motion for the House today presented is democracy is a myth. We're talking about present. We're talking about how democracy is a work in progress in our daily lives in this world today, not 2,000 years ago. Recession is again a concept which is in no way linked to democracy. Recession is an economic concept, whereas democracy is a social concept. It is a global phenomenon, and we cannot be ignorant enough to deny it. The fact that political parties were campaigning to earn their votes means that they believe that the power of democracy is vested on the people. Then the fact that a huge number of men and women showed up to vote in our last election gives you the simplest justification of democracy's existence. So my respected government, you may think democracy is a myth, but the general population of this country have outvoted you. Now let's, for example, say that the Loch Ness Monster is a myth. Now, if someone did recover a head or a tail of a Loch Ness Monster, would you still call it a myth? No, you wouldn't. Liberal and social democracies are the heads and tails of democracy. Various countries all throughout the world are trying to achieve that perfect goal from their existing democracies, which completely proves democracy to be a reality. Now, of course, there's absolute freedom in our country because there's, through such a vast media coverage now, there's obviously more accountability and transparency. If the ministers do not fulfill their promises, the voters will not vote for them in the next election. It's as simple as it gets, and we've already shown you how in extreme circumstances, democracies can even outthrow dictatorships because democracy prevails. I'd like to end my speech reminding all of us that we're all here in a parliamentary debate where the government is trying to pass a bill after seeking advice from the opposition. This is the simplest proof how democracy is working in our country. Because come to think of it, there wouldn't be a democratic debate without democracy itself. So I suggest to my dear government to try to pass a bill to strengthen democracy rather than trying to banish the mere existence of democracy when they themselves have been elected through a system called democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. May I now invite the Honourable Prime Minister and the Leader of the House to wrap up the discussion.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for giving the floor again. Land Opposition, your all sarcastic arguments are really very funny. Only showing honour to this sacred parliament, I am not laughing. You have told that today the verdict of the learned judges given by the majority will be granted, not by all. And this is republic, not democracy. And it's proved that democracy and republic are totally different. And second member of opposition claimed USA, and third member opposition have claimed India as a democratic country. Well, the foreign policy of India is put the pressure, meet the demand. They also interfere in the internal affairs of neighbor countries. And colonialism, imposing own decision on third world states, are the motto of USA and European Union. Knowing all these, should you claim this as democratic country? Deputy Leader Opposition have told that struggle for democracy throughout the world has proved that it's not a myth. Well, now listen to me very carefully. We all work hard only to achieve peace. But is there any example of getting absolute peace by one? No. So, only struggle by many for long doesn't prove its existence. For the same reason, democracy is also impossible, because to ensure equal rights for everyone is never possible. But third member opposition just claimed it. Now, in Bangladesh, 38% of people live below poverty line. 40% of children don't get light of education. There is only one registered doctor for each 4,000 people. So where it has fulfilled basic needs? In your daydream? Ladies and gentlemen, we asked you, people are crying throughout the world for food, clothes and shelter. Then where is right of people and where is the so-called democracy? We also ask you that if democracy is existed, then where the protector of democracy even itself is undemocratic? And is there any example of casting votes by 10% voters? You didn't answer. Why? Are you afraid of leaking out your all fallacious arguments? Land opposition. King Laxman Sen of Sen dynasty kept a backdoor for fleeing away. But have you kept any backdoor for your safety? You may take lesson from history. Deputy Leader of told about an alternative form of government. Well, now the desired solution may be good leadership, because dictatorship has given us Muammar Gaddafi, Mamun Abdul Gayoom, Mahathir Mohamad or Fidel Castro. Monarchy has given us Emperor Hussein of Jordan and Jigme Khesar Namgyal Wangchuk of Bhutan. And even Khulafai Rashidin, that is 4 caliphs of Islam, are also dictator. But they are the real well-wishers of people. And you must admit that no prime minister of recent world is directly accountable but people. But look, Khulafai Rashidin were, though they are not democrat. So form of government doesn't matter, rather success of a state depends on good leadership. Land opposition. It's now crystal clear that democracy is totally a myth. But is it enough clear for you? Since democracy refers to everyone's share in the government, suppose Mr. X or Y support a party and it has won the election. After that, they can pass any bill in the parliament whether he has consent in it or not. Then has he got a share in the government? Your answer should be, must be a big no if you speak the truth. Land opposition. In any country, a state within a state is its defense force. But there is no democracy. Command is command, command is impossible. So there is no democracy. Excluding this part, should you claim this as democratic? Do you want to walk without your 2 legs? You may fall down. Land opponents, we are sitting here, it is also relative, according to time, space and according to theory of relativity. But democracy is a myth, it's absolute. I repeat, democracy is nothing but a myth. Thank you all.
We have just witnessed an intense and interesting debate. The reason I'm saying intense, both the sides made their points very passionately. They tried to defend their turf, they tried to defend their definition. But as I commented in between the debate, that one side is saying that unless it is a rule by everybody taking part in the decision, it will not be complete democracy. The other side says there is a process by which the majority is elected and they decide on behalf of all of them. The other side challenged that once they are elected, say with 51% of the votes, in some cases even 30–40% of the votes, puts a party to the in power, and they can do anything. But the other side said, well, they have to face election again, and that is why they have to pay attention to what is happening. But in true form, in democracy, the ruling party would pay attention to the points made by the opposition. And I'm not going to make a comment whether our democratic process is what we follow in our country is the right one. But I would like to say that it's a process, and slowly we are improving on it. Possibly the best form of democracy exists in the communes in Switzerland. Let us accept that democracy is a process, and in Bangladesh we are striving, we are making progress towards the fulfillment of our goal to have a democratic government. We may not be there, but we are on the right path. With that, let me move on to the results of today's debate. I have the results given by the judges. Winner of today's competition is the opposition party, Sunbeam International School is the winner. With this, I adjourn the House.